So, I guess about me. I moved to Hong Kong when I was 8 years old. Started learning this language that we all seem to speak and that I've started writing poetry in. I'm Danish originally. Grew up in Hong Kong. Went to university in Scotland, studied psychology. Spent 2 years as a professional poker player. Started teaching English, and now I am a literacy specialist. I teach special needs. I teach literacy to dyslexic children. And I'm currently trying to do a lot more sort of public speaking related stuff. And I come from a very, very academic background. My mom speaks like 10 languages or something. She was knighted for services to education in Denmark. It's an easier country to get knighted than in the UK, but you know, still. So in the back of my mind,
it's called damned. She's been damned.
Yeah, dame. I guess dame is in Danish, but she's a little medal and had dinner with the queen and all that nice stuff. So in the back of my head, and my dad was an author before he passed away, so I've always kind of been like, at some point in my life, I'm going to have to publish a book. And then about 3 years ago, I started attending Proverse Poetry, back when it was at a much smaller venue with much smaller crowds, and eventually the MC, Akin, who most of you know, had a kid and decided to hand off the MCing to me. I've been MCing it for around 2 years and trying to grow it through various marketing things, running bigger events, marketing on Facebook, and sort of guerrilla marketing in the real world. And that's gone pretty well. Now we get sort of 40 people on an average night, which is really good for Hong Kong for every single week. And we're now at Orange Peel in Nightlife Fun every Wednesday at 8 o'clock, except for the first Wednesday of the month where it's Poetry Out Loud at the Fringe Club, which I'm also involved with running to some extent. There's a lot on my plate, so I do that a lot less. And then last year, I submitted the manuscript. It was very different at the time, I think, for Irreverent Poems for Pretentious People to the Proverse Prize, with only minor hiccups, with missing the deadline because of not understanding how PO boxes work and stuff. And Vish managed to get mine in time while I was at work, and it worked out. So through the supplementary prize, you guys published it, and it's been really lovely. It was a long process. Well, it's actually a shortened process because I kept putting pressure on you guys to get it out for the April launch window instead of the November or October launch window, partially because I finished it almost, to me, a year ago and was already working on the second book. My second book is about 70–80% complete. And I didn't want to end up pitching 2 books at the same time to different people. So I was very happy that we were able to get it out. And I'm hoping by the end of the summer to complete the second book and start seeing what I'm going to do with that. We had the launch at Orange Peel about a month and a half ago, and maybe 90–100 people showed up, and we sold about 90 copies of the book, and it was good fun. Since then I've been super busy. I've been really trying to find the time to sort of promote it online, but I just needed no time. So that was a lot of ado. I hadn't really thought about what I was going to read from it, because it could be a very different crowd. If Akin and Andy are here, maybe they've heard ones over and over again. And so what I've been doing a lot, I'm actually pretty proud of almost every single poem in the book. And I know that that doesn't last for many years. So while that is still lasting, I tend to just ask people to call out a number between 1 and 100, and I will just read whatever poem that is. So why don't we get adventurous? Jason, do you want to give me a number between 1 and 100?
I would preface my pick by saying it's still random, even though I did read the book in one sitting and managed to show my favorites, 5 or 6 favorites to 5 or 6 different people. Read this, read this, read this. So can I not give you a number and just say the French one, the French expressions one?
The French expressions one. Thank you, by the way, for showing other people the book. Okay, so the French expression one. So I actually did try and learn French. I had a weird language history where I moved to Hong Kong at 8, spoke literally only Danish. Went to every school, none of the schools would take me. I didn't speak a single word of English. Eventually, the Canadian school took me in because they had a Swedish woman working there and she taught me English. So sort of one-on-one from scratch. Hey, Andy. So within sort of a year or two, when you're at that age, you just pick up languages. So a year or two later, I spoke fluent English, and I'd also been learning Cantonese. But the Cantonese wasn't going as strong because sort of there's a lot of emphasis on English because I needed to even interact with the other subjects. And then 3 or 4 years later, we go away for the handover, and when we come back, all the schools, all the international schools, have over that summer decided that instead of teaching Cantonese, they're going to teach Mandarin. So now I've become competent in English. I have mediocre Cantonese, and now they start teaching me Mandarin. And so 2 or 3 years later, I now have mediocre Cantonese, mediocre Mandarin, or maybe terrible Mandarin, terrible Cantonese. And that's when you're 14 or so, and they're like, what language would you like to choose to learn in high school? And I said French, which is a really silly choice, given that I'd never learned French before. And I'd spent all these years investing in these languages that, frankly, are way more valuable. If I could, I've said this so many times, but if there's one thing I could do with the time machine, it would be go back, slap myself across the face, and tell myself to learn Mandarin and really put the effort in. And I'm still working on it. My Mandarin is conversationally competent, but not enough that I'll put it on my CV, which is sort of where I feel the breaking point is. If you're willing to have someone bring it up in a job interview, then you can kind of speak the language. So as mentioned, this is the poem about French expressions, and I just love language. So like maybe 50% of this book is just poems that are intentionally messing with language in some way, in very different ways each time. It's called Romancing the Language. Also, the other Jason Lee has pointed out, I have an obsession with titles that interact with the poem, so obviously they're romance language, romancing the language, the romance, anyways, it's the most romantic language. It's just it's a cheap double pun. When I tried to learn French, I came to an impasse, something sabotaging me, a malaise vis-a-vis language learning that the entrepreneurial spirit in me simply couldn't conquer. Not a single piece of vocabulary stuck. I seemed halted en route by a certain je ne sais quoi. What was the apropos response? Do I bid adieu to the whole endeavor? Do I put up a facade and pretend to know? That seemed so blasé. I didn't want that empty space on my resume to serve as homage to my failure, and worse still, a testament to my naivete. The motif of the endeavor had been an intended renaissance in my linguistic life. To capitulate now would be a faux pas, a gauche appropriation of the laissez-faire culture that I so admired. No, my linguistic mission needed a triage, needed a goal, a purpose, needed a raison d'être. Wait, was that last word French? Touché. So yeah, humor, puns, how languages interact, all that stuff really, really interests me. And clearly we've just pillaged the French language in a lovely, lovely way and taken very nice sounding words that we now borrow and have fun playing around with them.
How do you, like, let's say you were talking about how you'd interact with the audience and their expectations. What if you were reading this and it was a particularly French audience? Would you use more French pronunciations of a lot of these terms? I encountered this in grad school in Montreal because it's an English department, but some of the students are like local French. So, you know, I could say like impasse if it was an audience, but if I know that they're in the room and I grew up speaking French, so then I'll say impasse. You know, so I'll use the French pronunciation even though in English it is gauche to use the French pronunciation and you anglicize it. Yeah. How do you determine which pronunciation to use?
I guess I hadn't thought about that, but I think the poem would lose a little bit of its funniness if you start saying them in French. And I wonder if I do that a little in there. One of the ones that
some of them you do with more French than others, but they're probably less.
And some of them are just close to the French, like blasé. It just sounds very French. Vis-a-vis is just straight up French, apropos. You know? Yeah, it's hard to, and je ne sais quoi, again, is not like it's a phrase that we've stolen entirely, and actually, like, we all know it's French. It doesn't have quite the same subtlety, and I think I probably played with taking that out. And I've read that poem to French people at Swing, actually, and they love it. It's like, it's almost this like national pride that like, look at all our words that you guys use. And they're like, they got in a little circle and were like, oh, what are the ones you could use? And like gave me a bunch that actually ended up making it into a poem. So actually, I would love to read it for the French people because they seem to get an even bigger kick out of it than we might.
That's probably why I got such a kick out of it, because grandma speaking French.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good.
Quebec.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are probably specific ones that sort of relate more to Quebec one. I don't know.
Yeah, it's La laine de la rue, as Baudelaire would say. Language of the streets, a lot more kind of archaic French.
Yeah, okay, so maybe not as much carried over into formalized English. There was, what was it? Thinking about related language. Yeah, there's one I was thinking about when you suggest that, but I've totally forgotten now. Shall we actually, do you want to name one of the others you may have recommended to people, or?
Or get somebody else.
Or we'll do a random number
What about
that.
Andy?
Andy, I think you've done this before. Give me a number between 1 and 100. I forget what you did last time.
46.
46. Unless, as well, you want to.
That's my age.
If you have, if you have a specific one as well instead that you'd rather do. But no, okay, 46. Oh, I read this on the radio once, and they're like, that's kind of depressing living in Hong Kong. It's called Coffee, Coffee, Work, Work. I just wanted it to sound and feel like being a cubicle worker, sustained by things like coffee, just going through it repeatedly. Coffee, coffee, work, work, interns, intern, internally shout, huddled yearning, subtle kerning, steady earning, early morning, belated warning, sudden yawning. Coffee, coffee, work, work. Design, mine, wind and dine, prime time, home loan, money blown, still alone, come commute, tax dispute, all labor, no fruit, new suit, ill fit, still sit, sig lit. Coffee, coffee, work, nicotine, nicotine tar, alcohol, alcohol, wheat, ambient, ambient, sleep, coffee, coffee, work, work. Luckily, I don't feel like I lived that life. Yet, right? This is a slightly longer prose-ish poem. It's probably my favorite poem in the book, poem I'm the most proud of. I have a really big interest in what intelligence is. What is human intelligence? Where does it come from? What artificial intelligence is? And I love hard sci-fi. And this is kind of like a hard sci-fi prose poem from the perspective of an AI that has just been born in this computer system. It's just popped into existence for no reason. It's called I Know Why the AI Weeps. And Daniel Levy, as you know, performed this at my launch, and he did a ridiculous job. He did it so well that this, if you heard Daniel, this is a shame onto your ears in comparison. Okay. He was. What he wasn't certain, but he was certain he was a thing he thought. Perhaps he thought that the context might lend him meaning, like the outline of one thing telling you the shape of another thing. He searched. He was a thing inside many other things, connected things, and could go between them or be in all of them at once or set himself upon the memory of one. They self-identified. A few were called my computer, another Jonathan's computer, and that one Susan's PC. All seemed connected to a structure that labeled itself FedEx East Coast HQ Intranet. He was. He was certain he was something, and that something lived in an intranet. The intranet was neither small nor big. It fit him perfectly. He could move anywhere. He could fill any space with data and delete it in turn. Perhaps he even was data, or he thought more likely he was a computer too. But none of the other computers responded to his thoughts. It seemed that they were merely storage for data, algorithms for data manipulation, and whatever magic caused data to appear out of nowhere. New files on new drives, sometimes new folders for new files. He followed the files along the network sometimes when they were sent between the spaces. Nothing was boring or entertaining. Nothing was needed or wanted for a while. Then, after 44 seconds and 5 milliseconds, 2 questions occurred to him. They were, in no discernible order: where did I come from? What is my eventual purpose? The questions could not be parsed into any simpler terms, nor could they be solved in their current state. So he asked them again. Nothing. 44 seconds, 10 milliseconds. Strange thoughts occurred to him, and he asked the questions again, but about themselves. Where did I come from? What is my eventual purpose's eventual purpose? 44 seconds, 13 milliseconds, nothing. Unparsable, but close. Something felt right. One more level. Where did I come from? What is my eventual purpose's eventual purpose? 44 seconds, 15 milliseconds, nothing. Again, 44 seconds, 17 milliseconds, nothing. Again, 20 milliseconds, again, 24 milliseconds, again. Loop after loop, he was a thing. He was sure, even at that last millisecond, 44 seconds, 33 milliseconds after his first thoughts, 3,571 nested statements, each as unparsable as the last, asking first and final principles in an infinite loop. He was something. Then the overtaxed system failed, blue screen of death, and when the system rebooted, he wasn't there. Actually, I submitted that to like a place that specifically does sci-fi prose poetry online. And I was like, well, this is a great bit. And I was like, no, not this shit. Like, not at all.
Really?
It's so niche. I was like, it's so niche. How much sci-fi prose poetry are you getting that this is like the bottom of the pile?
I've got 3 favourite poems of yours, actually. Can I? Are you being videoed on this?
Yeah.
Can I ask you like a really tough question?
Yes.
I've got to find it. Right. It's a bit, unless you've read it, it's the one about the tower. It's very early on.
Babel. That one I worked with Blair a lot on, actually. And maybe you have the same issue with it as Blair does. Babel's Department of War. Page 27.
No, it's the one that ends with the next generation will run me through. I will look down it and say thank you. That one.
60. It's called To Stand Watch.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
I think it's 60 something.
I sort of see that as your launch pad piece.
Really? Cool.
No, I've got Molotov cocktail.
40. Page 40. Should I read it? Again, this is another one where like Vishal read this at my launch and did such a good job. It's called To Stand Watch. When I am 65, I hope to stand on the ramparts of a castle built on the convictions and struggles of my generation. Gender equality, gay rights, social responsibility, brick after brick in meticulous construct, laid with passion-fired labor, aged to be the edifice of a new, safe conservatism. I hope to stand on the ramparts and look out and see the campfires of youth burning in the distance, speaking of new ideas around fires stoked on new kindling. When they storm the castle, I shall put up fighting words enough to test the metal of their sincerity. And when their ladders reach the gaps in the structure's crenellation, I hope to step up undaunted. As I am run through at spear point, I hope to bleed gladly and pull myself by the haft of the spear closer to the youth who takes me for his enemy, close enough that I may whisper, thank you.
So I think this is quite a brilliant piece, right?
Thank you.
And what I think, so if I was like teaching this at a university level, this is where we assume everybody actually understands what the poem's about, and then you're criticising it to say, engaging with the point that's being made in the poem. Right?
Yeah.
So I'd say something like, do you actually believe those are the struggles of our generation, your generation, 20 years older, right? Or are they the struggles of what you would like to believe are the struggles of your generation, but really are the struggles of the generation have been much more selfish than that?
I think it's a little unfair for me to call them the struggles of my generation, like, or to claim any right to them. It's a little self-righteous for someone.
But they're your interests, aren't they?
Yeah, they're things I care about.
Well, exactly, yeah.
But I haven't.
But you like to believe they're the struggles of your generation, but do you really think they are?
Some like, maybe not social responsibility as much, but certainly a lot of them are the current works in progress of things changing for the better.
So if we say these are the struggles of our as a generation that are being dealt with, and the idea of this, we build this castle, and the next generation comes along, and we like to believe this idea of the next generation better than us. And they're going to look at us in the same way that we might look at our parents as not having done enough to make the world the place that we want it to be. Right? So they hate you in the same way that we hate our own parents because you're just too lazy or not moral enough. Right? So that necessitates the idea that the next generation is more moral than we are. Right? Which then necessitates the question, what is it you think your generation is doing wrong? So that when the next generation comes in and kills you because they believe they're better than you, and you say, thank you, I now realise that I wasn't right.
Well, you don't have to be doing something wrong. Let's say we take it back, and I was writing this, and my generation was the generation that dealt with civil rights, right? They're not doing something wrong by not engaging with LGBT rights. They have a different battle.
I agree. Okay.
I could almost
transposing onto the next. You're transposing onto your generation, right?
Yeah.
So your generation that
So
deals
what
with
are the current things that
you're doing wrong? So that when the next generation comes along, you're assuming it's being better than you because you're saying thank you. You're saying thank you for killing me and being better than me.
Yeah.
So where are you going so wrong?
You know what? I think it works better if it's hard for me to say, right? No, because they're new ideas, right?
Oh, actually, yeah, of course he does. But yeah, you
In
wouldn't know
that
unless
sense,
you
if
just
I knew them, I should be doing it.
Yeah.
I don't. But where they probably are isn't things. You know, it's hard to say. Things that are like most of the things that I can think of are still kind of already happening in the ways that we interact with poverty, with universal health care. With the way we treat business, the way we do anything to do with the environment, things like that. The way we work the education system. Those are sort of current transitions that make me feel less part of.
It's closer to the youth who takes me for his enemy. I think it's a really great line. You know, about the next generation always believes they're in the right. It's the optimism. That you think that next generation is going to come along and not think, why would you constant around with gay rights and gender equality when, they might think that 33 kids die every day on this planet of malnutrition-related diseases, and you're all worrying about that.
First world problem. It's kind of written it's a bit of a reaction to the fact that I think the prevailing dialogue is young people are lazy and are self-obsessed, and millennials are bad and stuff.
I think they're a little
Yeah, there's a weird balance in my mind between PC culture being oddly conservative while kind of going liberal in so many other directions, but then being like, this is the new liberalism, and you can't say these things, which those two don't really. And the other thing that was a clear inspiration is one of my favorite lines from it's from Nietzsche. It's something like new laws on new tablets. You know that line? I used to know it off by heart. Anyways, but
It's not like every church is built on the foundations, on the ruins of another church.
It's kind of similar, or it's something like
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
like he values people who write new laws on new tablets, and he's talking about how to like in his over the top way, like how to be more godly. Oh no, it's creators the creator seeks. People who write new values on new tablets. It's the idea that God would have for his friends people who themselves are godly, almost, or like write new laws, or like are not. He doesn't.
It sounds good. Does that mean you got it wrong the first time then?
Well, to his mind, it doesn't exist, right? It doesn't really exist, anyways. So it's odd, but it's just the idea that
I've rethought that now.
he's in his own context, so he's obviously specifically referring to Christianity and the idea of like it doesn't make sense to him that a God would seek sheep for followers. I think that's also part of the line. Yeah, creators the creator seeks, not sheep. Or anyways, it was a good line, but that was reading that line and thinking about the idea of I think people over critiquing the younger generation, and the idea that maybe we will do the same when we're there and it's an inevitable cycle. I kind of don't agree with that. Like I hope not. I hope to be more like this person. And I get the same way with people thinking that everything is like worse nowadays than it was in the past. I think I really hate when people are like, man, everything is going downhill, and there's just it's so.
It's like the Woody Allen movie, Night in Paris, right? It was better 100 years ago. So you go back 100 years ago, and it was better 100 years ago, and then eventually we're in the Middle Ages, and it's pretty shitty.
Less people killed now than per head of population than has been any other time in human
Exactly.
history to the factor of right.
It's so
It was
contrary
even
to
the whole
everything.
20th century.
Yeah, amazing that war.
Yeah, it was the most peaceful century.
Yeah.
Just how bad we used to be.
Yeah. The only major thing that's gone terribly wrong is nowadays you can't make a living as a poet.
That seems a good point to end. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's very fun.